Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. In this video I will be talking about Nagra, the second best transistor brand in the world and one of the very best tube amplifier brands in the world. So yes, let's get into it. And as you can see, I've created a scale here, judging the sound. Now, just to give you some context, I started off with the Macintosh MAs 9000. That's the unboxing, the back of it. Went through all the good and bad. And here you can see, you know, the black level, naturality, clarity, all of that stuff. Not bad. Most people will think that that's probably the best they're ever going to hear. And then I introduced Spectral, which was like basically the very best transistor sound ever, in my opinion. And I gave my impressions of that. Now, with Nagra, you get pretty much the same overall effect as Spectral. Some slight changes though. Black level, not quite as good, and naturality, that's basically it. Overall, really good sound. Nagra and Spectral are the only transistor brands that I will really recommend if you want the best of the best of the best. They clearly separate themselves from the rest, even though there are good brands, D'Agostino, Griffin, Burmeister, YBA, those are also really good brands, way above the average. But still, Nagra and Spectral, they kind of run the show at the very top in the transistor department. In regards to tubes, Nagra tubes is almost at the very best, but not quite. I mean, Audio Note really runs that show, clearly. But let's get into the whole Nagra sound. Just incredible. And the thing that kind of separates Nagra from Spectral is that it has more features. There's more pride of ownership. There's less of this minimalisticness. Let me just show you some pictures of Nagra. This is Nagra Verity speaker. That's the old Nagra VPA. Yeah, pretty good. Again, the old Nagra VPA, one of my very favorite Nagra amps. That's probably like, I don't know, 10, 14 years old. This design here. Again, Verity speakers, fantastic speakers. Really go well with that Nagra sound. Again, Verity speakers, and we have some Nagra gear here, and again some of the older Nagra gear. If we go over to the new Nagra gear that they make, you will notice that it's a different type of sound, more organic, more round, more warm, still very analytical, but it's more over in this DSD type of sound. But they do DSD at the highest level, so this is like one of the few exceptions where I actually like listening to DSD tracks. Of course, they have to demo their equipment with like a Kronos turntable, which is like some of the best turntables in the world. They also sound pretty decent with Avalon, pretty okay. I usually don't like Avalon that much, but YG Acoustics, yeah, they also sound good with that. I've heard that. Typically, they also like to demo their stuff with what's it called? Wilson audio speakers. I mean, it's obviously a match in heaven with all of these brands that I mentioned, and they're also all very expensive, so it kind of makes sense. But you can't really fault Nagra with their sound. They've got like 3 different sounds. They've got their transistor sound, then their tube sound, And then they have like the old sound that they did, that they stopped doing about 10 years ago, and then the newest sound that they're into, this classic line of gear, DSD, DAX, and all of that. And I feel that Nagra has improved, like Spectral and Audio Note. They just like keep upping their game constantly. And what I really like with Nagra is that even though they're very exclusive, they're still available. You can still somehow get a hold of them. With Spectral gear, it's almost impossible getting a hold of Spectral gear. Getting a proper demo in a store where they set it up in a proper way so you understand exactly what it's doing. This is basically some of the most expensive gear in the audio industry, Nagra, Spectral, and Audio Note. And of course, it should also sound the best, and it clearly is the best. I mean, I don't really think anything comes close to Nagra, Spectral, and Audio Note. But let me just give you guys my conclusion of what I think. I think it's the second best transistor sound in the world, where only Spectral offers a bit more. And if you're this kind of person that's into this crazy amount of detail with the layering and the depth, and also some of the most natural sound ever, and also that, I forgot to write that down, but that sense of space between you and the artists, and the details, that sense of space is just really unique with Nagra and Spectral. That's one of the magical things that just kind of makes you hypnotically not be able to quite leave the listening chair. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. And there are people who say that Nagra is a bit analytical, and I would agree with them. It is a bit analytical. But since it is so analytical, you have a lot of room to shape your sound. And that's I have to say that I also didn't write that down. I'm only remembering it right now. But that's one of the really, really good things about Nagra, is that it's kind of the, what can I say, almost the ultimate of neutrality. So if you're changing plugs on a cable or any small detail, Nagra will tell you exactly what is going on, if it's good, if it's bad, what direction it's going in. It really reveals a lot of detail. Now let me just dive a bit more into what I've written here. Even though it does not offer the best sound like Spectral, it is more compatible with more gear on the market, even though it is more analytical. And generally, it really likes to be paired with top-end gear, so never mix Nagra with other amp gear. You can do it, but it usually sounds weird. And also, try to avoid another type of source that's not Nagra. It can easily sound very different, very weird, and it's almost like Nagra has its own set of ohm on the source, or RCA, or whatever they're using. It's kind of, it just doesn't quite click with a lot of gear on the market, but it is more flexible than the Spectral gear, which is the best gear. So it's worth trying it. I mean, you can get a lot of different sound combinations with Nagra gear. It could really boggle your mind, especially when you're testing cables. If you want to know what a cable is doing, test it on Nagra gear, and have that Nagra setup be pretty good in a pretty good room. You'll be able to hear what that cable does. It's pretty obvious with Nagra. It doesn't park it in a safe zone where it covers up the detail and eats up a lot of the good stuff. This is like the really high-end class. And it doesn't have this like minimalistic, let me just take you down here, minimalistic spectral kind of view like this here. There is a lot of feedback looking at the gear. It is very cool and nice and knobby, and they also have these watt meters, which also kind of a bit like the Macintosh, really impresses you. So it basically has everything that you really want, and it's kind of, when you're getting into Nagra, you just have to know this. It's pretty finicky type of gear, meaning that it's very sensitive. Now, a lot of bad equipment on the gear is locked. You can't do a lot with it. Macintosh is a good example of it. A really good example of it is Vincent gear, musical fidelity gear. It's almost completely locked in sound. And but when you're getting into this almost religious type of sound with Nagra, it just really tells you the story from all angles. Is it good? Is it bad gear? Is my speaker maybe 10 centimeters too close to the wall? Should it go further back, further in, and so on? It will really tell you a lot about what's going on. And let me just dive into a bit more about how I can really elaborate on that part. So it sounds really good with Verity speakers, Martin Design and Wilson Audio speakers. And also on slightly warm pieces of equipment that you may not think is good enough to work with Nagra. It can actually sound pretty good. I mean, I've heard top B&W speakers sound actually pretty good. And I normally wouldn't categorize B&W as making good speakers, but it actually went really good with B&W one time that I heard it. So it's worth trying it on a lot of different gear. So one thing you also have to know is that MIT cables, I mean, that's almost like a naughty word for me. I mean, MIT cables, I generally don't like their sound of the cables, but I have to kind of agree. They sound spectacular on Spectral gear, and on Nagra gear they almost sound as good, almost. But what even sounds better is something like Top Nordost Odin. I also noticed that when I came across this Verity Sarastro speaker, I'm just pointing at the right thing, Verity Sarastro speaker, I found out that it actually has Nordost Odin inside. So yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That kind of makes sense why it then sounds so good. Because I never really liked the Nordost, Valhalla, and Odin sound, unless you really had it on every single part of the chain. So, I mean, that sounded surprisingly good. I mean, I really wanted that setup. That's one of the few setups where I almost felt like I would have given anything in the world just to get that. That was the what was it? It was Nordost Odin, Verity Sarastro, and then it was Nagra Classic line. And I also heard it with the old Nagra VPA and PLP preamp. Those two totally different times from two different Nagra eras just were heavenly, even though I have AudioNote, and AudioNote is more integrated, more natural, kind of more real, but there's still some of that layering and that certain type of view on details, and that's what really amazes me with Nagra and Spectral. It's just that view on the detail where you're seeing it from a totally different perspective. That when you're listening to Nagra and Spectral, it's so easy to think, wow, I'm just listening to a track that I've listened to a couple of hundred times, but it's almost like I'm listening to it for the first time ever, and just hearing all of these new pieces of information. You know, the guy standing next to the stage talking to someone, you know, being accidentally being picked up by the microphone, you know, or